Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Joe and these are the headlines. Pakistan says it is open to resolving issues with neighboring India based on dialogue. Army Chief General Javed Bajwa was addressing the inaugural Islamabad Security Dialogue. Bajwa said the resolution of the Kashmir issue is integral for peace in South Asia. The Army Chief said national security is not just a function of armed forces anymore, but a multifaceted concept. Nine Afghan security force members have been killed in a helicopter crash in central Medan Wardak province. The defense ministry says a probe is underway into the Mi-17 crash, but a provincial official told reporters the helicopter was hit by a rocket while taking off. In Armenia, Prime Minister Pashinyan has announced to hold snap elections on June 20 to defuse the country's political crisis. Tensions reign after he accused the army chief of attempting a coup and removed him from his post. The army has earlier called for Pashinyan's resignation over his handling of last year's war with Azerbaijan. Brazil has reported its highest number of daily COVID-19 cases since the pandemic began, with 90,300 cases overnight. Pakistan has registered its largest single-day surge in months as nearly 3,500 people tested positive in the last 24 hours, while 61 people lost their lives overnight, pushing the toll over 13,700. Globally, there are 2.6 million deaths and more than 121 million infections. And in football, Bayern Munich have cruised into the quarter-finals of the Champions League with a 6-2 aggregate win over Lazio. Robert Lewandowski was on the score sheet yet again as Bayern edged Lazio 2-1 in their second leg of the knockout stage. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan says it is open to resolving issues with neighboring India based on dialogue. Army Chief General Javed Bajwa was addressing the inaugural Islamabad Security Dialogue.
Bajwa said the resolution of the Kashmir issue is integral for peace in South Asia. The army chief said national security is not just a function of armed forces anymore, but a multifaceted concept. He said defense spending comes at the expense of human development. Bajwa said Pakistan has reduced its defense expenditures to avoid becoming part of an arms race. He called for a multilateral, regional and global approach to deal with security challenges. Speaking on Afghanistan, Bajwa said Pakistan has paved way for the Afghan peace process. He remarked that Islamabad has made efforts to enhance the country's trade and connectivity.
And for more on this, we are joined by Lieutenant General Naeem Khalid Lodhi, retired. So thank you very much for your time at Indus News. First of all, Pakistan's army chief says India should create conducive environment to resolve all outstanding issues with Pakistan through talks. How do you think India might respond to his statement?
I think whatever army chief said today was a follow-up what our Prime Minister said yesterday while inaugurating this, the first session of this conference. I think this has been Pakistan's constant stance that we would like to negotiate with India, with all neighbors, as a matter of fact, especially with India, they being a very big country, just next door to us, about peace and prosperity of the region as a whole. As our Prime Minister also keeps reiterating, and it was again told by Army Chief also, that it is the regions that develop and not individual countries. And peace actually is good for the entire this region, for all the people, more than 1.5 billion people of South Asia. So I think the Pakistan's offer, this is a renewed offer, I would say, but not a new one. As far as Indian intransigence is concerned, whether they are likely to react positively, I can't say much about it. There's only one indicator which gives us a little bit of hope, and that is the recent ceasefire between India and Pakistan Army on the Azad-Kashmir border. If that is taken a cue, maybe India has realized this thing, that there's no fun in having a continuous standoff. They will gain nothing. Pakistan is not going to succumb under the pressure. So maybe some sanity prevails. I think along with this, we should keep on appealing the Indian civil society and keep asking them to tell their government what is good for these people of this area. That might work. Other things are likely to take some time, whatever world is trying, whatever Pakistan is trying diplomatically. But let us keep our fingers crossed and let us see how these things respond.
Sir, General Bajwa said unsettled disputes in South Asia are keeping the region from moving forward. What do you say on this?
I think and he said that there's only one dispute which is of grave nature, and that he said is Kashmir. And he even, I would say that reiterated what Prime Minister said yesterday, that if India reverts to that, the position of 5th August 2019, before that, whatever was the state of Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan would open the dialogue, and we are ready to talk on all matters. And a peaceful resolution of Kashmir can actually pave a great way for the prosperity of these people. But General Bajwa also said that we can first tackle the easier part. For example, he said, what about Creek, and what about Siachen and such like things. The only thing is that India should be ready to talk, and of course they should be ready to talk on Kashmir also, and then the resolution of Kashmir can take some time. But there's just readiness to talk and have dialogue with us can resolve many other issues also. So he was very right that if we want to look at the future of 1.5 billion people of this region, probably talking is the only right answer.
So General Bajwa says CPAC remains central to Pakistan's vision, but only seeing Pakistan through the CPAC prism is also misleading. How will you explain this?
I think in certain quarters there was an impression as if Pakistan will embrace CPAC in a way that as if we are going to cut all our relations with everybody else, which was a very distorted view, I would say. Pakistan has long, relations with Europe, with America, with Middle East, and whether these countries like CPAC or not, we would not like to abandon all our economic and political relations with everyone around the world just because of CPAC. I think he clarified this thing that whereas CPAC is important for us, there's no doubt about that, but it is not that CPAC is the only thing that we'll be banking upon. That is a great booster of our economy, but we would like to invite all other countries also to become stakeholders, not only in CPAC but also in Pakistan in some other way. So I think he clarified this position very candidly and openly, that Pakistan is not solely and only banking on CPAC. CPAC is one of our rather the biggest, economic boosters, but it doesn't mean that we will not have economic ties with other countries, or we will not like to have other countries to join CPAC. I think that was the message.
Lieutenant General Naeem Khalid Lodi, retired. Thank you very much for talking to Indus News. I really appreciate that. And now moving on, 9 Afghan security force members have been killed in a helicopter crash in central Medan Wardak province. The Defense Ministry says a probe is underway into the Mi-17 crash, but a provincial official told reporters the helicopter was hit by a rocket while taking off. Meanwhile, in Kabul, 4 civilians have been killed and 9 others injured in a blast targeting a bus carrying government employees. The Afghan Information and Technology Ministry says they were renting the bus, but a ministry advisor, Abdus Samad Hamid Poya, said it was unclear at the moment who the victims are. No group has claimed the responsibility for the attack yet. China has urged the United States to work and engage with Beijing in a constructive attitude of sincerity. This comes ahead of the first in-person meeting between the top diplomats of Beijing and Washington after President Joe Biden took office. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian said grouping up and pressuring China is totally meaningless. At a daily news briefing, Zhao said there is no room for compromise on Beijing's core interests. He said the topic of a potential meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and US President Joe Biden is not on the meeting's agenda, but he added both the sides can discuss any issue of common interest, including high-level exchanges. Meanwhile, a Chinese delegation led by Foreign Minister Wang Yi has arrived in Alaska for the summit. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. will consider both diplomatic and pressure options against North Korea. This comes hours after Pyongyang ruled out any talks until Washington changed its hostile policies. Blinken said Washington will complete its North Korea policy review in the coming weeks. He made the remarks at a briefing after a meeting with South Korean officials in Seoul. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was also present at the meeting. In a joint statement, both the sides vowed to work together on issues including climate change, the pandemic, and North Korea. Earlier, Pyongyang criticized Washington's attempts to make contact, calling it a cheap trick. Foreign ministers of the G7 and EU have condemned Russia's continued actions to undermine Ukraine's sovereignty. In a joint statement, the ministers called on Russia to fulfill its international commitments for regional peace, including the Minsk Agreement. They reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty. The statement came on the 7th anniversary of Russia's illegal and illegitimate annexation of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol. Russia has recalled its U.S. ambassador for talks to prevent the irreversible deterioration of relations with the U.S. The Russian government says Anatoly Antonov was called back as ties with Washington have reached a blind ally. In a statement, our foreign ministry spokesperson said the Kremlin would consult with Antonov to figure out what to do next. Earlier, U.S. President Joe Biden called Vladimir Putin a killer. He said the Russian president will pay the price for meddling in the 2020 presidential election. His remarks followed an intelligence report accusing Putin of authorizing an interference campaign in the U.S. polls. In Armenia, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has announced snap elections in June to defuse the country's political crisis. Tensions ran high after he accused the army chief of attempting a coup and removed him from his post. The army has earlier asked Pashinyan to step down over his handling of last year's war with Azerbaijan. Protests broke out against the Prime Minister in November when he signed a Russia-brokered pact to end 6 weeks of fighting for Nagorno-Karabakh. Under the deal, Yerevan agreed to hand over swathes of territory to Azerbaijan, which many in Armenia see as a national humiliation. However, Pashinyan defied calls for his resignation. In Mali, 33 soldiers were killed and 14 others wounded in an attack on a military convoy in the Gao region. In a statement, the army said 20 assailants out of around 100 were killed. It said the assailants ambushed the procession in the country's volatile north. The army said the UN peacekeeping mission in Mali helped evacuate the wounded soldiers, while the French mission helped secure the area. No group has claimed the responsibility for the attack so far. The United Nations has agreed to Ethiopia's request for a joint probe into the country's northern Tigray region. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights spokesperson Jonathan Fowler said an investigation plan is in the works over possible war crimes in Tigray. Fowler said the Human Rights Office and Ethiopian Rights Agency will jointly pursue the inquiry. He said the plan includes required resources and practical modalities to launch the mission as soon as possible. Last week, Ethiopia's foreign ministry said it is ready to work with international experts to conduct investigations on allegations of abuses. Fighting between government and rebel Tigray leaders has killed thousands of people and caused thousands of evacuations. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The Arab coalition in Yemen says the Houthis have misinterpreted the U.S. decision to remove the group from the terrorist organization's list. In an interview, coalition spokesperson Brigadier General Turki al-Maliki said this has led to an increased Houthi attacks. He said Houthis are the first terrorist group that has obtained ballistic missiles, UAVs, cruise missiles and bomb-laden USVs. He added the Houthis want to practice their ideology and malign activity under the umbrella of a Yemeni government. Representatives of 14 Palestinian factions have signed a code of honor to accept the results of the upcoming parliamentary elections. The groups, including Fatah and Hamas, agreed to strengthen national unity in the second round of intra-national dialogue in Egypt. In a statement, the leaders said they will ensure high transparency for the electoral process in the Palestinian territories. They also agreed on completing the formation of Palestinian unified leadership on popular resistance. President Mahmoud Abbas announced to hold legislative, presidential and national councils elections in Palestine after 16 years. Brazil has reported its record high number of daily COVID-19 cases, with 90,300 testing positive overnight. Globally, there are over 2.6 million deaths and more than 121 million infections. More in this report.
Record spikes in deaths and cases and mutating variants are making the second COVID March even more devastating. In the United States, 2 strains first detected in California state were officially declared as variants of concern. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden's administration announced a new $2.25 billion initiative to address health equity issues related to COVID-19. Over in the south, Chile recorded an alarming increase in hospitalizations amid reports that the vaccination drive encouraged the public to disregard SOPs. Meanwhile, medical staff in Brazil's Sao Paulo state are facing increasing pressure as cases rise to record highs.
There is a waiting list at practically all hospitals with ICU beds, as people know. This creates a problem for health workers because we are already tired. And we have been doing this for a year now, so it causes additional stress. The stress of knowing that we are not helping everyone who needs us. The stress of knowing that when a patient leaves, I already have 4, 5, 6 or even more patients. Depending on the hospital you are in, your queue is bigger or small. But there are always waiting lists at all hospitals.
The European Union is considering allowing its 450 million people, vaccinated or not, to travel freely across the bloc within months. Poland has announced nationwide restrictions as the daily tally of new cases reached the highest levels this year. Meanwhile, Britain is set to see a glitch in its vaccination drive due to a cut in the manufacturing supply. Foreign Minister Dominic Raab accused the European Commission of brinkmanship over its threat to ban exports of COVID-19 vaccines.
Well, I think it takes some explaining because the world's watching. We've, all of us, including with our European friends, been saying throughout the pandemic that it would be wrong to curtail or interfere with lawfully contracted supply. We all said it last year on PPE. We've been saying it this year on vaccines and other things.
Over in Asia, Japan has approved a plan not to extend the state of emergency imposed in Tokyo, set to expire on 21st of March. Taiwan has completed checks on its first batch of AstraZeneca vaccines and the first administrations may start soon.
Pakistan's Minister of Planning and Development says there has been a sharp spike in COVID-19 cases in the country. In a tweet, Asad Umar said the number of hospitalizations and people in critical care is increasing fast. Umar said if SOP compliance does not improve, the government will be forced to place stronger restrictions. This comes as Pakistan registered its largest single-day surge in months as nearly 3,500 people tested positive overnight. The health ministry says 61 people lost their lives to the virus in the last 24 hours. It said the number of deaths has risen to 13,717. The ministry added nearly 616,000 cases have been detected so far, out of which more than 577,000 people have recovered. Pakistan and Kuwait have pledged to strengthen bilateral cooperation in diverse fields. Kuwait's Foreign Minister Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Nasser Al Mohammed Al Sabah called on his Pakistani counterpart in Islamabad. The two discussed ways to enhance people-to-people linkages and other matters of mutual interest. Qureshi briefed the visiting dignitary on the economic potential of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. He invited Kuwait to benefit from the investment opportunities in Pakistan. The foreign minister also highlighted Islamabad's efforts in support of the Afghan peace process. Al-Sabah hailed Pakistan's support to Kuwait, particularly during the global pandemic. Ukraine and Canada have rejected an Iranian report into last year's shooting down of a Ukrainian airliner that killed 176 people. Many of the victims were Canadian citizens or permanent residents. In a statement, Canada's government said the report appears to be incomplete and missing hard facts. It said the report did not attempt to answer critical questions about what truly happened. The government said Ottawa will soon disclose the results of its own investigations. Earlier, Ukraine's foreign minister also rejected the report, calling it a cynical attempt to hide the truth. Kuleba said Iran's probe did not follow international practice and ignored evidence supplied by Ukraine. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has appointed Jean Ono as his personal envoy on Afghanistan. The veteran French diplomat will also assist the UN chief on regional issues. UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric said the appointment will assist in achieving a political solution to the conflict. In a statement, Dujarric said Ono will work closely with the UN assistance mission in Afghanistan and regional partners. He added the United Nations aims to best support the people of Afghanistan in reaching peace. Meanwhile, China, US, Pakistan, Qatari and Afghan delegations are set to meet in Moscow to discuss the Afghan peace process. Prime Minister Mark Rutte has claimed an overwhelming victory in national elections in the Netherlands. Exit polls show Rutte's Liberal Party has won the most seats in the parliament after the socially distanced three-day vote. Rutte told reporters in the parliament that voters have given his party an overwhelming vote of confidence. Being one of the longest-serving prime ministers in Europe, Rutte said he has the energy to serve for another 10 years. His ally, the pro-EU D66, emerged as the second largest party. Meanwhile, the party of Islamophobe and xenophobic leader Geert Wilders lost ground to move into the third place. India's capital, New Delhi, has once again been declared the world's most polluted capital by a Swiss air quality company. Residents have expressed their discontent while saying these outcomes are a result of their faults. More in this report.
Smog-covered buildings, congested roads, and the contaminated Yamuna River have turned the life of Delhi residents into a living nightmare. This has been depicted in the report of the Swiss group IQ Air, which named New Delhi the world's most polluted capital for the third straight year. The report's findings are based on the measurement of the concentration of airborne pollutants called PM 2.5.
We should not be surprised at all. Delhi residents are reaping what they sowed. So if we are number one on the list of most polluted national capitals in the world, then we are the ones responsible for it.
Prolonged exposure to the toxic PM 2.5 particles can lead to deadly diseases, including cancer and cardiac problems. As per a combined study of Greenpeace Southeast Asia analysis and IQ air pollution caused an estimated 54,000 premature deaths in New Delhi in 2020 alone.
It is getting difficult even to breathe in peace. This is especially harmful to little children, patients with respiratory issues, and heart patients. Dust is the most annoying. Road construction is not proper. Broken roads everywhere are the main contributor to it. The heaps of garbage are breeding ground for disease as well. They are posing many problems for the residents.
According to IQ Air, New Delhi's average annual concentration of PM 2.5 in a cubic meter of air for 2020 was a devastating 84.1.
And other business updates, most stocks in Europe have edged higher. Investors are reacting to the US Federal Reserve Committee's decision to keep short-term borrowing rates near zero. Frankfurt's DAX is leading the gains, rising close to 1%. Italy's FTSE MIB, Pan-European Stock 600 and CAC in Paris have also gained marginally. But London's FTSE has slid fractionally under the flat line. Earlier, almost all Asian markets advanced, with the exception of Australian shares. And that's all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.